Helen Thomas,
Right.
and you know who she is.
I don't know. You know, I follow the Israeli media.
Okay, but you
I'd heard.
You heard. Okay. So let's talk, and that's really the beginning of our conversation, you and I tonight. With your perspective, justify for me the existence of Israel. Why Israel? Why should there be an Israel?
Okay, so.
Tell me, when you hear a comment like that, okay,
Yeah.
it probably sends chills up and down your spine like it does for me. It makes me afraid. It makes me angry. A lot of emotions. But tell me, and we have on some of our discussion boards and blogs, people will echo sentiment like that. It makes me very angry. And I want to know from you, from your unique perspective, justify the existence of the State of Israel.
Okay, so I have a couple of answers to that. And the first thing is that you say justify the existence of the State of Israel, and I say, okay, the first answer is, why should I justify the State of Israel? Do I have to justify the state of Canada? Do I have to justify the state of Mexico? Of any other state in the world? I don't. So what's unique about Israel? There's many things. It's a Jewish state, right? So when we hear among the population, it seems to me that Israel, as far as I know, and maybe you can share your view on this, but as far as I know, I think that Israel is the only state whose existence has to be justified. Right? There are many states that have emerged over the past 100 years, many nation states over the past 100 years. So why do we just question the existence of Israel? We have it's the one Jewish state. And I think that then it leads to your answer about the canary in the gold mine. It's the one Jewish state, it's under attack because it's a Jewish state, and if we're living in a world which is rising with anti-Semitism, then we're living in a world which is moving towards totalitarianism, or towards a more I
understand what
right.
you're saying,
Okay.
and you're right. No one sits around justifying the existence of the United States.
Yeah.
Or any other country.
Right.
And most of these countries have come into being and disappeared from being in the history of human endeavor over the last thousands of years.
Right.
Civilizations have risen, civilizations have fallen, and no one said, why Greece?
No.
Why Rome?
Exactly.
Why the United States?
So
and yet every
saying,
single day,
yeah.
people question, why should there be an Israel? And so I'm hoping that you would be able to give me some ammunition so we can talk about it. It's a very, because really, realistically, Naomi, at the heart of that issue is everything that Israel does, which is questioned, and everything that Israel does to protect itself, as any nation would, is what's questioned. And it's questioned on the basis of, you shouldn't be here in the first place.
That's right. Which is, and to me that always feels like you shouldn't be here in the first place. You as a Jewish entity shouldn't be here in the first place, because when you look on the blogs, they don't say Israel, they say Jew. And they don't, and oftentimes these blogs don't recognize the fact that Israel is a multicultural state and is an extremely diverse state which allows freedom to the Druze, to the Bedouin who do serve in the army, and instead they pinhole it on. So it's definitely an attack on Jews. Okay, so now let me give you the ammunition.
That's what I'm waiting
but I'll
for.
tell you it's, but I wouldn't say that this is what I would use to justify the existence of a Jewish state, because I think by right it deserves to exist, as does anything that exists today. However, I can tell you that Israel does have why it is important, and I can tell you why we're questioning it now. So the first, one of the first reasons why I would say that it was important is that my background is in political science. In political science, there's only a single theory of all the theories we've ever come up with which we have very, very solid evidence. And that theory is called the democratic peace theory. Now, the democratic peace theory, there's two versions, but the version which is supported basically says that if you have two democratic countries, they will not go to war. So, and that's the only theory basically for which we have solid evidence, for which we have. So, and that theory is basically used, it's implemented and has been implemented for about the past 50 years. So if you think of NATO, what was the purpose of NATO? It was to expand, right? To expand, to create and expand a democratic front. What's the idea of the European Union? To gradually democratize Europe, right? So that what was the idea of the European Union when they started? Let's not go to war again. Let's create a union of democratic countries. What's the idea? What was the idea of, whether you agree with it or not, what was the idea that Bush had when he attacked Iraq? To create a democratic entity so that we would have a stable democratic world, okay? So the first thing that everybody says, and in this they're justified by political science theory, is the reason why Israel is so important is that it is the only really stable, thoroughly democratic country in the Middle East. And if you look and you say, oh, well, Egypt's got a democracy and Turkey has a democracy, then you can say, well, yeah, they have a democratic system, but Israel, if you look at their party system, if you look at the media, the freedom of speech and the media, Israel is really the only solidly democratic country in the Middle East.